Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Hope you're doing well. We're going to be talking about the American Psycho film that was announced recently. It's going to be directed by Luca Guadagnino, and supposedly they're set with the actor who's going to be playing Patrick Bateman, which we'll get into that detail in a bit. But with that, my first question to you is, do you call this a remake or a readaptation? Or if you're like me, does any of that even matter? Because this discussion comes up all the time with other films, and people can be quite particular and sometimes borderline defensive about how you define these movies that are based off of a source material or have a other film that came out before it. And I think American Psycho is a good example of that because you have the 91 novel by Bret Ellis, which I haven't read, and it'd be worth mentioning, and the better yet, if I had read it, then I could give more insight into particulars and how the films evolved from that novel. But then you have the film from 2000 starring Christian Bale, which has left such a footprint in our culture and over the years became such a cult classic, where it's undeniable, I think, that the film to come out will have a difficult time to not be associated or directly connected in some way to that film. So then what do you call it? And does it really matter? Is it kind of a redundant discussion that people end up having? I think so. I think people get way too caught up in the technicality of it all. But so anyways, Luca Guadagnino, Italian filmmaker who's been very prominent in Hollywood recently. He's popping out films on a consistent basis, multiple a year even. I think he's had 2 films this year with Challengers and then Queer. I've only seen Challengers, and before that, the only other film of his I've seen was Call Me By Your Name. So not being overly familiar with his work, just based off those 2 films, I will say I think he has a stylistic sensibility which could potentially lend itself well to American Psycho. His narratives, I felt, were a little thin, stretched out. He had some good sequences that were more intimate sequences or relationships between characters. But anyway, going back to American Psycho and the novel, which again mentioning I haven't read, but I have since learned that one of the big elements of that novel was that Patrick Bateman, the character, was extremely homophobic. And the 2000 film doesn't really address that so much. And I think Luca Guadagnino will definitely be addressing this aspect of the character in his version, and therefore making it distinct from the 2000 film. The narrative and the story of American Psycho, as done in the 2000 film, is so rewatchable and so well done, because the exploration of Patrick Bateman is ambiguous, his narrative is inconclusive, and it fits well with that materialistic, hollow person who I don't think needs to be subjected to 80s New York investment banker. That is the character, but you're looking at a deeply hollow individual who is style over substance. And I think people who maybe had issues with the film wanted more conclusive answers into what he did or didn't do and his motivations. But I think it is subjective to this interpretation of a very materialistic, cold person. With that, I think this will be a gargantuan challenge for the upcoming actor to play Patrick Bateman. To not be compared to Christian Bale's performance is nearly impossible, for all the reasons why we know Bale's performance to be so iconic and great. I think it's equally important that this actor try and make it his own. And before we talk about who that actor is, I did want to take a sec to just talk about the channel. As this becomes a more full-time hobby and slowly more people are starting to watch, I felt responsible to give some indication as to what you could expect. I've not been shy in kind of making whatever different variations of videos whenever I feel like. So within that you get movie news and speculation like this one. you get movie reviews. Sometimes those turn into longer format discussions that aren't edited. And I'll be completely honest, I could understand those not being them being a little tedious for a viewer. They're more so an outlet for myself and Ashley when we sit down and talk a lot about a particular film. What I've really enjoyed doing recently was making what I call cinematic breakdowns, where there's a lot of work put into the writing and editing, but it's honestly so much fun, and it seems to get a lot of response from you guys. So, I just ask, let me know what you think about that. Cinematic breakdowns I could do reliably on a weekly basis, releasing them on Thursdays, and then in between that, I'll pepper in videos like this one. Whether you like it or not, all the same, let me know, and then we could figure it out as we go. But that's what I wanted to give as like a conclusive answer as to what you could rely on the channel for, because that needs to exist. With that, we can move on to the main topic of the video, which is we now know supposedly who will play Patrick Bateman in the upcoming Luca Guadagnino American Psycho film. It's set to be Austin Butler, which I think is interesting. Himself as an actor, as a person, he's likable. He carries a kind of quiet vulnerability, which I could only connect to actors like a James Dean or River Phoenix, where besides their looks, their obvious looks, there's that stoicism, that quiet yet intensity to them. So does that fit Patrick Bateman? And I begin to ask myself, and you of course, why you think was he cast as Patrick Bateman? I'm worried it's for the obvious superficial answer, which is his obvious looks, but also was it because he most recently portrayed a psychopath as Fade Ralpha in the Dune film? I think it'll be difficult for him for us to see him disappear into the role like what a Christian Bale can do. So it's almost like, I would say it's almost unfair for anyone to jump into this role following a Christian Bale whose performance is so pivotal to what that film is. But with that being said, I'm interested to see it. I'm trepidatious, and in that sense, I applaud them for taking on this story again, but I don't think it'll be the definitive one between the two ultimately. But good on them for trying. Anyways, I want to know what you guys think with this casting, with Luca Guadagnino making American Psycho. Would you have tackled on this source material? Do you call it a remake or a readaptation? All that good stuff. Comment below. Have a great day. Happy holidays, everyone. You're awesome.